Between 1971 and 1973, Ajax of Amsterdam won the European Cup 3 years in a row. They triumphed with a revolutionary tactical system where players and positions were fluidly interchangeable. It was free, it was flowing, and it was christened Total Football. Theirs was a team of stellar names: Krol, Neeskens, Kaiser, and of course Cruyff. It was one of the finest teams ever assembled, a team that influenced many others and left a legacy that is still resonating today. On the 30th of May 1973, Ajax beat Juventus to claim their third successive European Cup. Just a decade earlier, such success was unimaginable.
Ajax at that time was still in their organization, an amateur club.
Before Rinus Michels arrived, it was just a fun club, more social. It had nothing to do with professional football.
He didn't have directors, he didn't have, no, there was a president. And then, people who did it in their spare time.
What happened when Rinus Michels came in was a complete different way of thinking.
We had to get rid of this semi-professionalism. We had to go fully professional.
I never forget what Michels told me when he arrived at the club. Because he came from an amateur club, JOS, and he always told me JOS was 3 times better organized than Ajax at that time.
We had some very good quality players, but they all were semi-professional. So people were working or training in the afternoon. And then Piet Keizer was the first professional and I was the second, which means you were not working. You could train during the day. So physically you could do things. Weak things, you could train much more.
It became clear to me at that time that the main role of the coach was to continuously work on the performance levels and potential of your players.
I was the one who was totally in the way of thinking of Michels at that time.
He had the luck that he got the talent of Johan Cruyff, who could bring over his philosophy into the pitch, where he has no control.
The discipline within the tactics, the discipline within the controlling the whole things.
In addition, to develop a new playing style, one which flowed from your own ideas of how football should be played.
So the ideas of Michels, with the sauce of Cruyff over it, made it all happen.
After you saw people getting better, creative. And then it started to show.
In 1966, Ajax won the league by 7 points, but it was in the following season's European Cup that their fame began to spread. Besiktas were crushed before Ajax met English champions Liverpool in the second round.
It was so misty that evening. Nobody could see anything.
Ajax saw enough to race into a surprising and commanding lead.
When it was 3-0, I thought it was half-time. I walked off the pitch towards the changing room. But when I was back at the tunnel, someone shouted, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's half-time." "No, it's not," they said. So I walked back onto the pitch. I got the ball, I passed 2 or 3 English players and crossed the ball for a goal. 4-0.
A Dutch team win against an English team was something outrageous that didn't exist. At home we won 5-1, at away we draw 2-2, which was a fantastic result. But the game we played was totally different than they were used to.
The ideas of Michels were producing dramatic progress. The 1967 and 68 league titles were added, and a year later the team reached the European Cup final. But on the big stage, Ajax were found wanting.
At that time was in Madrid against Milan, and we lost there, not because we were worse, but the experience was not there. We made some choices, mistakes, but you have to go through these mistakes, otherwise you can never understand what it is. You had to learn from it.
Milan surged to a 4-1 victory, but lessons had been learned. The following season saw Ajax make minimal changes, though one of these would prove significant: the promotion of Ruud Krol to the first 11.
We had a good team, with one superstar and 5 or 6 world-class, or at least European-class players, and that's what made us unique.
Michels finally had the team he wanted, and they were playing the way he wanted. Ajax had developed a new style of football, and it would fundamentally influence thinking in the game.
Attackers and midfielders would defend, and defenders would build up and attack. And it all happened with a constant fluidity. So of course you could call this total football.
We had 2 fullbacks, Krol and Subir. They were really quick. One-on-one you had no chance against them. In central defence we had a Yugoslavian, Vasovic, and Barry Hulshoff, who was 1.90 m tall. Any balls into the box, he would win the headers. In midfield, we had Arihan, Neyskins and Muren. And in attack, Kaiser, Cruyff and Svart.
If you talk with players from that time, they say that Cruyff actually changed the style of playing, because you saw that Cruyff was actually more and more searching for a position in the team where he could get less kicks. So he some dropped to the midfield, he went to the left side. Actually, Cruyff was the first total football player, just to protect himself. And from that situation, it came like, you know, players took it over. They thought, well, if he can do it that way, why can't we do it anyway?
This new way of playing was impressive, but Ajax wouldn't be the first Dutch team to triumph in the European Cup.
Feyenoord was not Ajax, but Feyenoord is the first Dutch team that won the European Cup. A team like Ajax became better because of Feyenoord.
Feyenoord's 1970 European Cup wins spurred their rivals to excel.
And then the great period started in '71.
It was the hippie time, it was Woodstock. They already, when they started the game, they were 2-0 ahead, just the way they looked.
In the European Cup, KS17 and Torre Tirana of Albania were beaten 4-2 in round 1.
They came in and they were not afraid for no one.
In round 2, Switzerland's Basel were thrashed 5-1.
There was no weak point in that team. It was a free spirit time, and it was a free spirit team.
In the quarter-finals, Celtic were defeated 3-1.
Rock bands like the Beatles and the Stones at that time, they had the discipline to make good music, and they had the discipline to play good football.
My quality was a special quality, but if you see the quality of Kaiser, it was special too.
Kaiser was on the score sheet in the semi-final against Atletico Madrid as a 1-0 away defeat was turned around spectacularly at home.
It was more a team performance where you get all these quality together to make it as a team.
Atletico were dismantled 3-0. Ajax had reached the European Cup final for the second time in 3 years. The final would be played in London. Ajax faced Greek champions Panathinaikos, but would do so without Ruud Krol, who had broken his leg. Despite this, the Dutchmen remained the favourites, and the weight of expectation was felt by all.
Feyenoord had already won the European Cup. I think that result put extra pressure on our club to do well. So there was more pressure on us to get the result. Not just for the coach, but for the players too.
After losing in the 1969 final, Ajax were determined not to make the same mistakes, and any lingering doubts were removed after just 5 minutes, thanks to Dick van Dijk.
By half-time, it should have been 3 or 4-0 to Ajax.
Under severe pressure, Panathinaikos held out until 3 minutes from full time, when Arie Haan finally found the crucial second goal. At last, Ajax were European champions.
That night was the culmination of many years of hard work. The way the players moved within the team was extraordinary.
It was a joyous moment, but the celebrations were tempered by the news that this would be Michels' final game as Ajax coach.
By winning on Wembley, the first European Cup against Panathinaikos, I think Michels realized, okay, you know, the climax I have reached the climb with the team. We have to get rid of each other to keep the peace.
Michels was a nice enough man, but when it came to work, he was very strict.
And then came Kovacs, who was the other way around, was an easygoing guy, was a father type. And he got with a team that had so much discipline that actually they needed somebody who created some space in the mentalities.
We could handle that discipline. So he let things go a bit. He was more relaxed. And at the beginning, you could see that in the way that we played.
Stefan Kovacs had won a league and 2 cups in Romania with Steaua Bucharest, and he soon made an impression in his early days at Ajax.
He had a lot of connections in international football. For example, whoever we played against, he knew exactly how they would play. And he knew exactly who would play. He was very well informed.
And the team, with Cruyff as a leader, knew exactly how far they could go. So it was a perfect match at that time.
By March 1972, Ajax had reached the quarter-finals of the European Cup once again. This time they dismissed Arsenal, winning 3-1 on aggregate.
It became more free, it became more creative even than everything. There came an outburst of everything they had in their bodies.
Creative in attack, Ajax were equally resolute in defence.
We would play for a 0-0 draw, such as against Benfica away in the semi-finals. We won 1-0 at home and drew 0-0 away. And that was an important factor in our team, that we were able to do that. We could attack well, we could defend well, and of course, that was the basis for a good team.
Ajax were in the final again, but faced formidable opponents, Italy's Inter Milan.
They had some great players, like Mazzola and Jair. They were very accomplished players, and they had a good team.
The problem we had was that Ajax were just beginning a period of dominance. Meanwhile, our winning cycle was coming to an end.
The game would be played at the home of Ajax's bitter rivals.
It was in Rotterdam, and Feyenoord was still our biggest enemy. And what could be nicer than winning the European Cup in their house?
Physically, they were very strong. Normally, players who are very strong physically don't have great feet. They run a lot, but they make a lot of mistakes. Not Ajax. All of their players had great feet.
There were 2 different styles. We had the initiative in the game, but you could see that Inter, on the counter-attack, were very dangerous.
I remember that after half an hour, we'd only had 1 shot on goal. They always had the ball. It was a style of play that no one had ever seen before. So they surprised us. And of course, they had Johan Cruyff, one of the best players ever, and he punished us with a goal.
Cruyff was the superstar, like Maradona, Messi, Pelé, and we had 5 or 6 other world-class players too, like Neeskens, Zwart and Keizer.
And with 12 minutes remaining, it was a superstar who settled the victory.
I think every team that saw that final, the 2-0 with Johan Cruyff scoring twice, saw that final, thought, oh my God, what can we do against them?
Ajax had ample reason to celebrate. As well as the European Cup, they'd won the league and the domestic cup, an incredible treble that had seen them lose just once in 48 games. And in September of 1972, Ajax became champions of the world. Independiente of Argentina were beaten 4-1 over 2 legs in the Intercontinental Cup. It had been the most successful year in the club's history, one which saw them lift 4 trophies. 1973 was begun imperiously as Ajax swept aside Cup Winners' Cup champions Rangers in what became known as the Super Cup. And in March they met Bayern Munich in the European Cup quarter-finals.
In those years, Ajax was simply outstanding. They had some great players.
Ajax were a strong team, whereas we were just developing. We were in a transitional period and bringing in young players like Paul Breitner and Uli Hoeneß.
The Ajax team had remained largely unchanged. The young striker Johnny Rep was in the side against Bayern. The first half saw the Dutchman struggle to break through. Patience was required.
Of course, we were waiting for the first goal, and it came at a good moment for us.
Arie Haan gave Ajax the lead 8 minutes into the second half. The German defence crumbled.